Although a challenging year, 2020 was one of the best I've ever spent railfanning. In January, before the pandemic was on anyone's mind, I took a trip south to North Carolina to chase trains along the former Clinchfield Railroad, now part of CSX. As well as the Watco-owned Blue Ridge Southern Railway, located west of Asheville, which services a paper mill and a few remaining customers on the former Southern Railway Murphy branch. Norfolk Southern even made an appearance as we caught a local train navigating the famous Old Fort Loops on our way home. I have to say, even though this area is incredibly remote with little rail traffic, the gorgeous scenery makes it a train chaser's paradise. Of course, no drive up and down Interstate 81 would be complete without chasing trains on Norfolk Southern's Roanoke and Hagerstown districts, another low-volume but highly scenic line which retains its old Norfolk and Western signal infrastructure. In February, could you believe I shot 0 trains? With central Pennsylvania having an extremely mild winter with no substantial snowfall, as well as the slash and burn effect of precision scheduled railroading resulting in the retirement of many locomotives that I watched during my childhood, I just wasn't motivated to head trackside. I did, however, pre-order my new camera, the Panasonic X1500. The long zoom range and ability to record at 4K and 60 frames per second are what sold me on this compact beast of a camcorder. In the middle of March, I took a trip to western Pennsylvania where I caught some seldomly used coal branches on CSX west of Cumberland, Maryland. The adventures of that day can be seen in my video, A Day of Unexpected CSX Railfanning, Unexpected Catches, which I highly recommend viewing after this video. This would be the last day of railfanning before the COVID pandemic turned the year upside down, but as we'll see, the best railfanning of the year is yet to come. Due to shipping delays during the onset of the COVID pandemic, I didn't get my new camera until early April, but once I did, I took it out for a spin along the Harrisburg line to learn the ins and outs and dial in some settings. While I planned to be on a trip to New Mexico in April, that was promptly canceled, and I spent most of the month at home building and testing out my new camera setup. May was a continuation of learning the camera, and by now, I think I was starting to get the hang of it. Spring is always a beautiful time along the Harrisburg line, and I couldn't help but to get several shots of these colorful wildflowers at milepost 81, which signifies the distance from Philadelphia. The highlight of the month, of course, was catching Amtrak's new Acela Express performing a test run between Philadelphia and Lancaster. Moving into June, I made many more visits to the Keystone Corridor once service was restored to put the 4K 60p capability of this camera to the test. And it did not disappoint, capturing the high-speed action at some of my favorite spots between Coatesville and Harrisburg. The highlight for me was finally visiting Mountjoy's new station, which replaced at-grade pavement in poor condition and a set of failing wooden staircases with high-level handicap-accessible platforms. In July, I made several visits to the Reading and Northern Railroad, who debuted their newly painted set of former Norfolk Southern F units on the first full mainline passenger run on the 4th of July weekend. The main event was showing off the recently completed bridge over the Lehigh River, which provides a direct north-south connection between Reading and Pittston for the infamous North Reading Fast Freight, the NRFF. Later in the month, I explored some of their other freight operations, including the West Hazleton Fast Freight and the roustabout with its usual pair of switchers. The rail grinder also made an appearance back home on the Harrisburg line. And of course, what summer without a visit to the Strasburg Railroad? In August, aside from the usual Norfolk Southern Harrisburg Line railfanning, I finally felt comfortable traveling out of state again. As you may know, states like Pennsylvania, New York, and those in New England have some of the toughest travel restrictions in the nation. However, with a very low case count in Vermont, a group of us decided to visit and chase rare daylight trains down the New England Central Railroad, made possible by Vermont Rail System detouring their trains around tunnel construction in Middlebury. Of course, we visited other railroads while up there, including the New England Central Chip Train delivering biomass to Burlington Electric, as well as Canadian National entering the United States, and Canadian Pacific on their recently reacquired Newport subdivision. We also followed a train down the Canadian Main on our way home through New York. In September, I decided that I missed Vermont so much that I made yet another trip for more detour train videos, as well as Vermont Rail System's Green Mountain Railroad operations. As longtime subscribers know, I spent 4 years of my life up here for college, so I also used this as a chance to show my fiancé around for some quality sightseeing in some fantastic weather. But not every day on this trip was clear and sunny, as heavy winds and rain made for some very turbulent waters on Lake Champlain. I finished off the month back home in Pennsylvania, along the Harrisburg line. It's getting harder to find the motivation to visit the rails I grew up alongside, with almost every train being led by one black GE wide cab after another, but occasionally the railroad decides to throw a bone. The plus side of this, of course, is using the time I normally spend locally to explore some new places. That's exactly what I did in October, with several visits to the Delaware-Lackawanna Railroad, capturing their fleet of Alcos on local and mainline operations during the transition of the fall foliage. The DL always puts on a good show with their 4-axle heritage locomotives, as well as their 6 axles roaring down the Pocono, Maine. I also crossed the river into York County to visit Genesee and Wyoming's York Rail operations for the first time. I can't believe it took me so long to get here, only living such a short distance away, but like many short-line railroads, they rarely run on the weekends. One of the last CF7s in service also made an appearance on the Ma and Pa side of the railroad, affording one last chance to shoot this venerable locomotive before its retirement. Of course, I did plenty of rail fanning along Norfolk Southern Harrisburg line as the foliage began its colorful transition. By early November, the foliage around here peaked, but it wouldn't stick to the trees long with the heavy rains that moved in during the second week. The highlight of the month was attending my first charter on the Middletown and Hummelstown Railroad, organized privately by a close group of friends. It was a fun day riding behind the Western Maryland Alco S6, as well as stage photos with Amtrak, and an afternoon train parade down Brown Street, with 2 GE 65-ton center cabs on the second train. In December, I finished off the year with another chase of Reading and Northern's famous fast freight between North Reading and the Lehigh Gorge. The trio of SD40-2s put on a good show with a big train. A couple weekends later, a rare opportunity presented itself on the York Railway. Almost the entire roster of 4-axle Jeeps pulling daylight coal trains to Spring Grove.
Alright, the machine's up. Everybody clear job 3, head 1.
This operation is normally done by York Rail crews at night, using the Norfolk Southern power. But a broken dumper the weekend before left York Rail pulling extra duty to deliver the rest of the train with their own motive power. What a better segue into winter than the first snowfall of the season. While it was supposed to be a big one, we only accumulated 9 inches. Still plenty enough to cover the landscape and get kicked up by high-speed Amtrak trains. I hope you enjoyed this video and give it a like and share with your friends. I'm excited to share the full-length features with you, so stay tuned and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I thank you all for helping me hit the 100,000 milestone this year. I'm curious to know which trains in the video are your favorite, as well as any railroads or any exciting trains that you saw this past year, so please leave a comment below. I hope you have a happy and healthy new year, full of lots of rail fanning, so until next time, thanks for watching.